So for the next part of the process, we're gonna go ahead and do a quick wash on this thing, and I'm gonna get out some brushes, and I'm going to get into these areas here, try to clean those up a bit. First I'm gonna foam it, then I'm gonna use the 2-bucket method. I already put soap in there, filled the rinse bucket with water, and filled the foam cannon with just a little bit of soap. I don't want a lot of soap on there. So we're gonna go ahead and foam this thing down, then I'll grab the brushes. The foam looks really thin, and I did that on purpose. I don't want a lot of soap on there. It's already pretty clean. I just want to knock off some of the dirt, so there's no need for a ton of soap. Plus I have quite a bit of soap in my bucket, so. For the emblems, I'm gonna go ahead and use this brush here. It's fairly soft. I'm just gonna dump it in this soapy water, and I'm gonna scrub around the emblems with the hope of getting all the dirt out from in between. When I get into the polishing stage of this, before I polish in this area here, I'll go back with some other brushes and I'll make sure I get every little piece of dirt out from in between the emblem. And normally I'd use a smaller brush. In this case, I know I'm gonna go back over it with a fine-tooth comb, so let's go ahead and remove the hitch. So this thing's already pretty darn clean. I'm just trying to get off the extra. Any kind of dirt that's settled. That's all I'm after right at the moment. So normally when I'm washing, I'm gonna start from the top, work my way down. Because it's so clean, I don't really care. I'm still gonna probably do it pretty close to that, but it's less important than if it was super dirty, and I have to be a lot more careful. So you're gonna see that I'm constantly turning my towel, or not constantly, but I'm turning my wash mitt after I hit an area. In any places I'll spin it. For drying, this is what I use. It's an Ego 56 volt, and I bought a stubby nozzle, and I'll use this to dry most of it, and then I'll follow it up with a towel, and then we should be ready to go. I don't know about where you're at, but there's a ton of mosquitoes right now. I'm gonna go ahead and dry it. the rest of the way with a towel. I will also be ceramic coating all of the glass on the outside only. Okay, she's looking pretty. Next, I'm gonna pull it into the shop and let's get to paint correction and everything else, plastic and everything. All right, see you in a bit. Moving on to the paint correction. One thing that I'm going to do prior to polishing everything out is I'm gonna fix some of these areas. So some of these areas where paint was repaired, maybe just not quite right. So I'm gonna go ahead and touch these. This is a really good one, nice deep scratch. And all I'm going to do is I'm gonna take the tip of this and I'm going to take this tip and I'm going to scuff all around this mark here. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm going to clean the area with GYEON Prep. So it's basically just isopropyl alcohol with a little bit of color and scent. And anyway, so I'm going to clean up this area, then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna fill in that area, and it's probably gonna take me 2 times to do that. I'm only gonna focus on this one for this video because the same rule applies for all of these little nicks and dings and scratches. So I wanna do this before I start doing anything else, or before I move on to the buffing process. That way this will all blend in properly. So let's go ahead and start here. So I'm just gonna get the tip in here. I'm going to scuff it. I want to get down to the metal and also kind of scratch the area around it. And this will give it a good area to bond to. When it's all said and done, I will fill in the area. It'll probably take me 2 coats to do that. So I'll fill it in lightly, then I'll come back, I'll give it a second touch. Hopefully at that point it's somewhat bubbled, maybe just a little bit. Then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna smooth it over with a razor blade, and I'll show you how I do that. Then I'm going to do a wet sanding on the whole area. Then at that point it'll be ready for the single stage paint correction. So grab my spray here. Just gonna mist it onto there. And the reason you wanna spray, use alcohol, is it gets all the junk out of there so I can properly fill this in. So I'm not gonna touch it at this point. The paint that I'm using is OEM paint. 040 is the paint code, which you can find if you open up your driver's side door, look to your right, you will see it. And it says 040 on there. So once I feel that's dried enough, I will take this, I'll shake it up well. I'm gonna pull some of the paint with a syringe, and then I'm gonna lightly fill in that area. The next stage of the process, I'm going to be using a bottle cap, a clean bottle cap for that matter. And I'm gonna pour a little bit of this paint in there. Then I'm going to use a syringe, and I got these off eBay. I probably spent 10 bucks on everything between the syringes and the needles. And I'm going to use this. I'm going to drop just a little bit, and then I will carefully fill the hole without filling it too much, and then I'll let it dry, and then I'll come back and I will fill it in again until it's just over the paint, and then I can come back in and finish up. So I will do some wet sanding, get this area looking proper. So I don't use the brush. I've never had any success with that, and this is one of my favorite ways of doing it. So I have the paint in here. I'm just gonna draw a little bit up, maybe. Let's see. So I don't know if it's gonna pick it up on here, but there's some paint in there. I don't need much, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave it like that. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to very carefully place this in here by dabbing. Now we'll let it dry, and then I will come back and it'll be sitting below the surface still a little bit. I'll fill in the rest of the areas. Or I should say, I will fill in the rest of this after it dries. So it's gonna sag a little bit. That's okay. I can easily remove that with the razor later, and I'm gonna show you how to do that safely. And then just right up in here, you can see there's a little bit of a pocket in there. I'm gonna come back and I will handle that. And when I do that, I will make sure I get footage of that. So it's been 24 hours and we're gonna go ahead and fill in the rest of this. This is the one that we're working on. It's a little overfilled in this area. It's underfilled in here. So there's a little bit of sagging. I'm gonna show an easy way to kind of remove that. I know it's not pretty at the moment, but when it's done, it's gonna be really nice. So I have my paint in my syringe. I'm gonna very gently push up, just get a pinch of paint out. And I'm going to attempt to go over just slightly. And that's more than plenty. When this dries, it's gonna shrink down a bit to the surface. If I look at it from the side, it looks way worse in this view than it does looking at it from the side. But it'll shrink down a little bit, then I'll be able to shave it with a blade, but there's a trick. So when I do that, I will for sure take more video of it. On top of that, I'm going to wet sand after that, and it'll really blend in nicely. You won't be able to really tell unless you're looking for it. So I'll come back after this dries and then I'll show you how I do that. See you in a bit. Okay, so it's been 24 hours since I put on the second coat. As you can see, I kind of hit some other areas. What I'm gonna do is level these out as much as possible before I go to sanding. And what I'm gonna use for that is a razor blade. And as you can see, I wrapped a piece of tape on both sides. And what that does, that leaves the center exposed. Actually, there's a little bit there, but we don't have to worry about that. This right here is gonna be just lower than this right here. So you're not gonna be cutting into the paint as long as you're sitting flat. If you come into a corner like this, you're in trouble. You will cut right through the paint. So kind of have to be careful. So what I do is, and this is the one, and it really depends on the paint and the surface and everything else, but what I like to do is I'll start at kind of an angle. So like this. So I'll start at an angle like this, and that keeps it even farther off the surface. So right now I'm not touching anything. Then I'll bring it down closer to straight as I go. And I may need to come back over that one more time. But what I will do is I will scrape that, and as you can see, I'm not touching any of the main paint. Hopefully it's still picking it up. So what I'm doing is I'm basically slicing the paint off the top as much as possible. I'm trying to get it as close to the surface as possible, so when I go to sand, it doesn't require a lot of work. And I will very carefully do this until I get it very close. But as you can see, I'm not touching the surface at all. All I'm doing is I'm shaving off the top. So I'm gonna have to go in there with a little bit more paint, but just to give you an idea, this is very close to the surface now. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this top here. deeper. However, I think you get the gist. So, and I think this is a good indicator. So you can see the daylight right there in the middle, and the daylight is going to be the thickness of the tape. So that's keeping it up off the surface by a tape's width. And that's how I personally handle this kind of stuff. What I'll do is I'll go through the rest of them, and when I'm done, you'll barely be able to notice. You may see a pinch of something if you're really looking, but it'll be so flat that you'll hardly be able to tell. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up, add a little bit more paint, and maybe I'll hit one area real quick. So hopefully you can see this. That's very close to the surface. Do a little bit more. So now I'm just left with a little bitty piece right here. I'll come over and I'm gonna wet sand it, and that will cover everything. All right, so that's how I handle it when I go to wet sanding. I'll take some more video. For the next part of the process, I'm going to wet sand the area. And what I'm gonna use for that is 1500 grit wet dry paper, and I'm using a DURA Block. So what I'm gonna do is spray this down. Put some water on the surface. Spray down my paper really well, and I won't bore you with the entire thing, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it flat to the surface, and then I'm going to sand back and forth. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure down. All I'm trying to do is knock down the high points, and that's it. I want to take it all down until it's all flat. Then after that, I can come back and polish it, and that'll be it. I'm either going to go from 15 to 2000, or I'll go 15 and then I'll go straight to polishing. Okay, I'm going to continue with this, and then we'll come back in a few. After sanding and polishing, it came out good. Is it perfect? No. That's it. Came out pretty darn good. I'm okay with it. So, all right, moving on to the next process. So polishing the taillight, what I'm going to use is the same foam pad and 3D1 to polish it. And I already have some polish on the pad, and let me show you how this works. Be prepared to be amazed. It's pretty good. Let's see if I can get this one-handed. So this is unpolished, and this is polished. All with 3D1 and a yellow Rupes pad. So I'm gonna finish these up, move on to the next process. For the next stage of the process, I'm going to polish the wheels, and for that, I'm going to be using DA COARSE by Rupes. The reason I'm using this is I used a whole bunch of other polishes to see if I can get out the scratches, and it's the only one that would take them out, and it also left a beautiful finish, which I can either refine or leave it as is. It's really up to you if that's what you want to do. I'm also going to be using cone-shaped foam, possibly the Ball Buster by Chemical Guys. Okay, starting with the Ball Buster. I'm going to shake up the bottle real well, which I already did. I'm going to apply a little bit of product right on the end, all the way up till about here. And then I'll probably just smear it around a little bit. And so the goal with this is to knock down the bolt, and then I'll come back with the cone shape, show you how this works. So this right here spins, so I can keep my fingers on it to put pressure on it while I'm going. So I'll go ahead and just start with the section. So hopefully that's picking it up on camera. If you look right here and here versus there, it's quite a big difference. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the very bottom of the wheel so you can really see the effects. There we go. So hopefully you can see the scratches and everything. And you come over to here. Absolutely beautiful. So hopefully that's picking it up. I'm going to continue on with this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the rest of the spokes. Then I'm going to use the cone shape using the same paste. And this goes into these areas here, into the radiuses. So radiuses in the corners. That goes in there easily. Come back, wipe it off, and you are good to go. All right. Well, hey, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. By the way, I'm going to be following this up with ceramic coating, so I will. I'll show you the before and afters as well. All right. Have a good day or great night, and we will see you soon. Thanks.